Welcome back to the show. Check out these headlines we have for you. National debt is surging. We got Ray Dalio's going to break this down for us. The Federal Reserve reporting a massive loss and pulling the safety net. Pulling the goalie, ladies and gentlemen. The BIS preparing for a new financial system. We got China. We got BRICS. We got BRICS versus the G7. We got this. Brian Brooks, you're going to need to hear this in context to today. Chris Larsen, and guess what else? The World Economic Forum in the Freedom Zone, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, it's bad, 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 bad. Leroy Brown. We need to know it all. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube for exclusive content. Right now, $1.68 trillion market cap for crypto. The market is up 3.2%. We are at 41,400 plus for Bitcoin, 2,200 plus for Ethereum, 95.6 billion plus for Tether market cap. XRP is 52 cents. If we could stay above it, this could be good news going into the weekend. We'll see what happens, but we got to stay above it. 2.5 up on the 24-hour, but still off by 4.3 on the 7-day. The range of price very quickly here. If I can get my actual clicker to work here. 51 cents is where we're sitting, almost 52 cents. 50 cents on the bottom, 52 on the top. We'll keep an eye on it, see if XRP wants to go for a jog on this Friday. But until we do, listen, we're going through a massive financial shift. The greatest financial paradigm shift in the history of mankind, to be more to the point. And that means gold is God's money. And I don't know about you, but I'm trying to get physical gold as much as I can during this time because it's what the central banks are doing as well. I like to do what they do because that is the way to do it. Because I know that if they're doing it, then I need to do it because they're the ones that always win, right? The central banks and governments always seem to come out on top. So I think I'm going to try it to a degree to the way that they do it, as much as I'm able to. And you can too for the best prices. Click underneath the video and use the email info@milesfranklin.com. Put dig gold in the subject box and you won't believe it. The best prices, the best service. You're going to love it. Make sure you check them out. Tell them I said, come on in. Right here. Last time the Federal Reserve reported an operating loss was in 1915. Remember, the Depression was 1928, 1930 window. So it was all before that was headed there. And here we see the central bank has just recorded another loss in 2023 of $114.3 billion. Uh-oh. Could we be a few years away from a repeat scenario? And this gives you a more macro view here. Who is incredible investor Ray Dalio explains what happens when fiat currency is going to a collapse. Debt holders are selling. Central banks print money to buy debt. Currency devaluation. This is happening now in the United States of America. There you go. Let's take a listen.
Indicators of when a fiat currency is going to decline into collapse is when those who are holding its debt sell the debt and the government, central bank, has to print money to buy that debt in large size while that's going down. Those are the most important indicators. So that you can see it, again, I want to repeat, selling the debt so that there's a big supply-demand imbalance and the central bank having to come in there and buy the debt that no one else will buy in large quantity so that then there's a currency devaluation. You have those three things aligned, the currency devaluation going down at the same time as those other two things are happening. And that's been a classic. It's like a bank run. They come to the bank, there's not enough money in the bank, and so they have to make up the difference by the printing of money.
And there you have it right there. And I tell you, that's a minute and 8 seconds of serious business. And we're not just talking about, selling bad packaged real estate default swaps. That's how the last crisis happened. What we're talking about now is the problem of the next crisis is at the feet of the central banks of the world. That's what Ray Dalio is talking about right there. And that's what we're talking about today. And listen, I'm not saying this or showing this video, putting this video together to be an alarmist. I'm doing it because it's the real moment that we're in. And it's hard to believe if you're here in the United States or some other place that has a strong economy or a solid economy and always has, that you've known and experienced. But this is the moment that we're in. Now let's take a look at this. U.S. national debt surges more than $98 billion just in January as lawmakers warn America is rapidly approaching a crisis point. So this is the debt surging. We got a printing problem. We got people dropping the debt. They don't want to hold the bonds. Then listen to what just happened here. Shout out to Zach Rector for this piece of news.
The Fed rug pull has been confirmed, and you don't need an economics degree to be able to decode the data. It's actually very simple. And if you did go to school for economics, you might as well throw that degree out the window, because they continue to rewrite history, the definition of a recession, and how they even calculate the data like our inflation. It's all one big facade. It is completely delusional, and the masses are not going to be ready. This is why in today's update, I decoded the data for you, explaining why the Federal Reserve rug pull has been confirmed. Not only did they raise rates at the fastest pace in history, but now they are ending the BTFP, which is the Bank Term Funding Program. It was the liquidity backstop that they implemented last March during the banking crisis. And so now that this program is coming to an end in March, this is the backstop for the banks that is going away. And as we've been saying, this trickles all the way down to Main Street in the U.S. economy. The full update has been dropped on my YouTube. Make sure you guys go check it out. Thank you.
And there you have it right there. They're pulling the goalie, right? The safety net that's been used now for years to bail everybody out has been pulled back in. And that tells me that's just like musical chairs, right? They just took the chairs away. Look, we covered this. The Bank of International Settlements has unveiled its central bank digital currency and is entering a new phase this year. You think that's an accident? You think this is just happening because Bitcoin's running wild and other cryptos are going nuts and people want this stuff? That is the smaller part of this point. The bigger point is that the Bank of International Settlements is the central bank of central banks. And yes, they're obviously heading and leading all of these projects because they know the larger problem isn't crypto growing into being a multi-trillion-dollar industry. No, that is not the problem. The problem is their industry is collapsing because the crisis is at their feet. This is not a real estate crisis. This is an everything dollar crisis. That's what this is. And that's why I'm so excited about that's why I'm a long-term investor and not a trader. I don't do trades. I don't chase candles. I'm here for a macro play, 10 years plus play. That's why I'm here. And the Bank of International Settlements and other central banks, I believe, know exactly what Ray Dalio knows, and that's why they're preparing for this shift. And I'll tell you what, they also know what Brian Brooks is going to tell you here in a second, too. And let's not forget the geopolitical angle as the world moves forward. The massive digital yuan pilot projects planned in Shanghai development, and they are the leader. China is the leader in the race for CBDCs, and I don't like CBDCs at all. You guys know that. I'm clear about that. I'm not a fan. But the reality is I'm even less a fan of a Chinese yuan CBDC. Good Lord. Then we have the larger narrative geopolitical movement is all of the countries joining BRICS. And now it gets the attention of U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, who says it's a major problem with BRICS. We should all be concerned what's happening there. And you know why? Because when you compare BRICS coalition and its expansion and the GDP, the gross domestic product, versus the G7 countries, what you find out is that BRICS alliance boasts of nations with the fastest growing economies as their GDP is climbing higher against the G7 countries. And we know that they all are participating in a Project Sandman, which they intend to at some point to simultaneously ditch the US dollar. And some of them individually have already been turning away from the US dollar in the way that they normally operate with it in trade. and using their own local currencies. Look, I don't think this is necessarily bad. I'm just saying we need to see our country and government be prepared. This is why I talked to you about the idea that if we see stablecoin legislation come and we see it set up in a way that allows multiple private institutions and banks to issue their own stablecoin legitimately under prudential regulation, it will tell me stablecoins are not only digital money for the internet, they're also a sponge to soak up the hyperinflated dollars that may be coming home sooner than we think. America could lead to transition to a digital currency reserve, but you know what? Not if it's a CBDC, according to presidential candidate Donald Trump has said, and recent presidential candidate just ended his campaign, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I also like a lot. I think that guy's really got a good head on his shoulders too. Look, there's a lot out here going on politically. I'm a one-issue voter, and it's about digital assets. You know what I mean? And there's a lot wrong that you could vote on in this world, but that's where it's at for me, because when I get involved into politics, it's because it's come to a crossroads of my pursuits and my endeavors. And that's it for me. And they're like wrenches in a toolbox. I'd use a Democrat. I'd use a Republican. I'd pimp out anybody I needed to get what I need done, because that's what they do. Ain't no fan club at my house. This means war. What we're talking about here is Brian Brooks. I want you to hear him explain exactly where we are. You may have seen this clip, but let's understand where we are and the things that are happening here. This is a very big moment. This is the greatest financial paradigm shift in the history of mankind. And it absolutely is about replacing the underbelly, the very foundation of what banks are built on. And that's why we have the suppression. That's why I believe we have regulatory capture of the SEC and the things that we've seen and the inconsistencies to suppress innovation and allow the U.S. to be the leader. Oh, we're going to win this. We're going to win.
Cryptocurrency does not seek to replace currency.
Exactly.
It's a bad name. Cryptocurrency seeks to replace banking. The core things that banks have done since the 1300s, those are going to go away, 100%. And let's just be clear what I mean by that. The reason that we even have banks originated in Italy around the year like 1340, all right? And the reason they originated was because of a set of accounting advances that allowed banks to serve as trusted intermediaries between parties that owed each other money. Before that, literally, I would write you a note and I would promise to pay you money, and you'd put the note in your pocket and you'd see if anybody else would take the note. You know, that's why we refer to discounting notes. And then banks arose, and it was like, you no longer need to do that. We'll take care of it for you, but you're going to have to pay us to do that. That function of needing a trusted intermediary to maintain ledgers of account to figure out, do I owe Brooks money or does Brooks owe me money? It turns out that function no longer has to be done by human beings. The same way we don't need postal clerks anymore. I can send you an email for free and it's instant, and that's just the end of the post office. Sorry, but it just is. That function will go away. What's going to be left for banks is the high value add services, you know, structured finance, investment advisory, you know, all of the things that make a dynamic economy function. We still need people to do that. There's a lot of creativity going on in finance. But the core of banking, the base of the pyramid, the thing that drives most of their revenue, doesn't need to exist. And that's why I say, and I was saying to one of the organizers even before we stood up at this panel, cryptocurrency does not seek to replace currency. It's a bad name. Cryptocurrency seeks to replace banking.
And there you have it right there. And that's why we got a 180-degree reversal from Gary Gensler going from MIT to the SEC, I believe, into the hands of regulatory capture doing the bidding for the central banks. And then let's talk about this, because the idea of where we're going, how do we get to where we're going? What's going to be a solution? Well, I'll tell you, it'll be Ripple. It'll be XRP. Because we're going to have a money crisis problem. You think we're going to change over to a new financial system and there isn't any bad weather? There's no stormy weather? Of course there will be stormy weather. Of course it will be very difficult. Of course it's going to feel very scary. It already does, and we're not even there yet. But that moment is coming. And it may sound like, well, you're crazy. Everything's fine. There's nothing wrong. And XRP's 52 cents. I get it. I totally get it. But you know what? When we saw the last world reserve currency change take place, it was a 10 to 15 year window and building struggle for the United States with the US dollar for it to even be considered an option at the time to replace the pound. I'm not suggesting that XRP will replace the US dollar at all. What I'm suggesting is that a bridge currency will be introduced and primed with liquidity to help service the financial system the way it is today, with respecting the hyperinflated dollars of the US and other areas of the world, so each country can begin to address the issues in their nation from within their borders without having to deal with the currency manipulation that goes on around the world every single day. So not only are you ushering in the new payment rails, you're ushering in a technology, a ledgers from multiple different protocols. There will not be one to rule them all. And in doing so, you're bringing in the ability to deal with the spillover shocks of printing too much money, of the exhausted end of fiat currency serving as a world reserve currency. And I don't believe the dollar has to stop being a dominant world reserve currency either. But you have to do something to put the confidence back into it. It cannot simply be it's backed by the full faith and confidence of the U.S. government, because the world isn't buying that anymore. It's reaching an inflection point. So you have to start to introduce something else, and I think this is where it goes. I got to be honest. Take a listen to this clip from May 22nd, 2013. Chris Larsen, absolute visionary, Chris. You're an absolute visionary. I want you to think about where we are. Just here we are, 11 years later. 11 years later approaching here, and listen to how relevant all of this is.
We're excited about it. We think we call it the math-based currency movement. We think it could be the biggest game changer in finance since the internet was created. We kind of view the currency as supporting a new global, free, irreversible payment system that's open to everybody, rather than the other way around. But on the utility part, that's where we think we could add a lot. Because utility really comes to having a payment system that everybody can use. So for example, the payment system needs to be multi-currency. So the structure that we've built to solve the double spend problem, which all math-based currencies have to solve, it's basically a global ledger. Everybody shares the ledger. And then there's a process of consensus, which is what solves the double spend problem. That structure allows us to have any currency in our payment system, including Bitcoin, dollars, euro, yen, rubles, anything. So we are right in that moment, and now where does it go from here? And the potential is just incredible right now.
And it really is, and it's even more incredible today, 11 years later, almost to the day. We're just a few months away from it. So, look, this moment here is a massive moment for all of us. We know how close we are to seeing some legislation get passed for stable coins. Again, forget the on and off ramps. Obviously, we know that. Stablecoin legislation is going to open up the financial world to the rest of digital assets, period, full stop. If we get it, it's a game-changing moment, and it will move so quick and so fast from that moment, it'll make all of our heads spin. Remember, crypto itself is a very small market, and it will be a small market always, and I don't care how big it gets. The larger market is the traditional markets and the tokenization of them. All right, we're heading into the freedom zone, ladies and gentlemen. We got the Bond villain. World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, he's going to say the quiet part out loud, and boy, he says it proud. He wears it like a merit badge. This stuff is disturbing, and I tell you, we have, I'd love to turn a blind eye to it, but we can't. We cannot do it. And I'm not suggesting that you have to take up arms and just join government and try to dismantle this or that or the other. What I'm saying is it makes sense for all of us to be prepared about what the rest of the world is trying to do. And if you're not prepared, if you don't have a plan, you got a plan to fail. Not financial advice from me or anyone else. We're going into the Freedom Zone. Come on in. I'll catch all of you on the next one.